This is Excel 2016, Module 5, Part 4. In this segment, we're going to be looking at Excel tables, how we can filter them, using both the filter arrows, and the tool called the slicer. So we're going to get back into our June workbook. We should be back on the sales data worksheet, and you should click in your table to make the June table current or active. When you do that, you should see your table design tab. And again, we created this table, called it June table. We have been working in a prior segment with sorting. So we have a number of sorting options set. If we go back and review, you can see on the sort button that we have several fields that we are sorting by, some of which have custom orders. And those are all set in place. So now we're going to look at filtering the data. So in addition to being able to sort on these fields with these arrows, using the buttons up here, again, that's only with one field being used for the sort. We can also come down here and use these check boxes to help us filter the data so that we can see segments of information instead of all of it. So if I wanted to see just those individual records, I can uncheck the box that says Select All and click on the box that says Individual, and then when I click OK, the only records displayed are the individual ones. Now notice you also get another visual cue up here on your filter arrow. It turns into a funnel. That funnel is telling you that this has been filtered on some field or some value within that field. Now, unlike sorting, if you filter by one option and then you choose another and add more filters, it just continues to build filters on top of the other filter. So for example, right now I'm only looking at individuals. If I said I only want to look at amounts that are less than or equal to 200, I could come in here and say Select All and start checking boxes. So I'm just going to do it this way, and you can see it took several checks to get that accomplished, but it combined the two filters together. So in addition to filtering on individuals, now it has filtered on the dollar amount. But in order to get that filter to work, especially on the dollar amount one here, I had to check numerous boxes. So let's take a look at an easier way. I'm going to go ahead and select all, and then I'm going to go back into it. So for selecting another filter, I also have these number filters. So instead of checking a whole bunch of individual boxes, I could come in here and say I only want to see those values less than or equal to, and I could type in the value 200, and it would automatically make those selections for me. So much more efficient way of selecting. I do want to point out that there are date options if you're in a date field. There are also text options that you can use if it is a text field. So if you find yourself looking for the correct answer and clicking a whole lot of boxes to get to what they're trying to get you to do, look and see if there is an option over here that will get you to that answer quicker. Okay, now let's say we want to clear the filters. I do want to point out this clear button up here. You need to be careful with that. Sorry about that. Notice what it says on the tip. This is not only going to clear the filters, but it will also clear your sorts. So if you do not want the sorts to be cleared, and then you would have to recreate your sorting, do not use this option up here on the ribbon. Instead, you can choose one of two ways. You could click on this filter arrow and you could say clear the filters from business. The other thing you could do is on this filter arrow, you could choose select all, and that will also clear the filters. Again, be really careful with this clear button. It will not only clear your filters, but it will remove your sorts. You can select multiple options as well. So for example, if under businesses, I wanted to see both individuals and restaurants, then I could uncheck the two boxes that I didn't want to see, and it would include both of those options. Now again, if I wanted to come in here and say I want to see all numbers that are greater than 400, rather than coming in here and checking a whole bunch of boxes looking for the ones that meet that criteria, I'm going to use this number filters, and I'm going to say it has to be greater than, type the amount 400, and it's going to automatically make that selection for me. Notice you also have the ability to combine that with other options. So I could say is greater than 400 and is less than 500. And then it would eliminate anything that was over 500. So you can make these number filters, you can make them more complex by utilizing this and or. I'm going to go ahead and remove these filters. Again, you can choose clear from or select all. and it goes back to having no filters set. Now let's look at our slicer. So over here on our table design, we have a button that says Insert a Slicer. Now what a slicer is going to give me is it's going to give me an interactive tool that visually will show me which items I'm filtering out or not including and which ones I am. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a slicer, and we're going to tell it to give me a slicer on the sales ID. You notice it creates this object, so I can move my object. I'm going to move it so that it starts in G1. You'll notice when the slicer is active, I do have a slicer tool option. So I can come in here and I can choose certain things off of the ribbon. So for example, one thing I'm going to choose is I'm going to pick a style that's going to match the table. So it looks like it goes with it. And this is going to be this dark 6 on the style. Another thing you can do is you can change the height and width of the buttons. Notice this is the buttons, as well as how many columns of buttons you have. You can also change the actual height and width of the entire slicer, which is the entire box, similar to the chart area of our charting that we worked with. So we're going to change the size to be a height of 1.9 and a width of 1.25. And you can see that it resized that slicer for us, and it gave us a green look. So it does look similar to our table that it's next to. Now let's say we want to use that filter. So if I said I only want to see those records with a sales ID of 1, I click on 1 and it sets it so that only records with a sales ID of 1 are visible. Now, if I want to select adjacent ranges, it's going to work just like adjacent cells. You would hold the Shift key down. So if I wanted to select 1 through 3, I hold the Shift key down and it selects all of them. If I wanted to do non-adjacent, such as sales IDs 1 and 5, but nothing in between, you will press the first one, hold the Control key down, and press the 5th one. And then it would only show you those 2. If you want to clear what you have set and return it to showing all of them, you click this X up at the top. It will clear all of the set buttons and return to all of them being set. Slicers were originally introduced to work with pivot tables, which we will use them again later in this module. But with the last version of Excel, they added slicers to work with the tables as well because they were so well received with the pivot tables. Notice when you're working on the slicer, you no longer have a table tab on your ribbon because you are editing the slicer. If you want to go back to editing the table, you need to click on the table, then you get the table design tab instead of the slicer one. Because those are both contextual tabs, you will only see the tab that relates to the item you are currently working on or is currently active. Now remember, if you go up to your data tab, if you were to choose this when you have filters set, you would lose your sorting options that you had done as well. We're going to consider working with a total row in our table in the next tutorial, or the next segment, excuse me.